everyone, and welcome one more time to Dead to Rights, the podcast video for the crime genre industry. I'm your host, Donna Carrick. Today we're going to be bringing you a great new writer on the scene in the crime writing industry, and his name is Jim Bottomley, and he is the author of the soon-to-be published manuscript titled Hypnotizing Lions, which is just a great title. I mean, it's fun, it's intriguing. And the premise of this story is that a man escapes from a psychiatric ward and has to find out what has happened in a crime. So I've read a little bit of this yet. I haven't read the whole thing yet. It hasn't been published, but I was one of the early readers on it. And I can tell you that Jim really brings a great style of writing to this. And it's a very intriguing premise. Before Jim comes on the line, I've got to, as usual, remind you that we've got an anthology coming out from Carrick Publishing later this year, and in fact, late October, titled A Grave Diagnosis, 35 Stories of Murder and Malaise. And each of the stories in this by 35 different and very unique writers, each of the stories involves both a crime and an illness of some sort. So it's kind of sadly suitable for 2020, unfortunately. And that comes out from Carrick Publishing 2020, and we'll let you know, of course, once it's out. The 35 writers in this are going to surprise you. They're so, each one is so unique, and many of them are quite well known to you. So watch for that, and we'll soon be announcing all of the authors. And glad to see you there, and hope that you'll look it up. And now I'm very pleased to bring you Jim Bottomley. Please give him a big Dead to Rights welcome. Good morning, Jim. How are you this morning?
Hello.
Hello. How you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. Yourself?
Very good, thanks. It's good to see you on this COVID morning. I think it's quite a nice morning, though, isn't it?
Well, we've got a little bit of rain that happened last night, so it's just, I think it's going to be clearing today, but it's
Where are you located? Where are you?
We're on a lake, actually, staying at a friend's place. So.
Oh, is that ever beautiful?
Yeah, so it really reminds me.
It's beautiful. Which lake are you on?
It's called Kemp Lake on Vancouver Island near Souk, and it reminds me so much of Ontario. It seems so similar to Ontario.
You are in the land of rain, though, aren't you?
Well, it's kind of a misnomer in some degrees because the Olympic Mountains west of us is in Washington State, and it collects all the weather. And so we see the rain and stuff across from us, but we only get about a third of the rain of what Vancouver gets.
Wow.
So,
well, I always think about McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do. All very dark and rainy and moist and yeah.
Every scene, I mean, it was famous for that. There was no scene without rain. They just decided to go for it, and the geographical theme. And what a movie that was, if anyone hasn't seen it. We're here in Georgian Bay, just a little north of Wasaga, and it's a beautiful day here. The sky, I'm looking out the window, is just gorgeous blue.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
I know. We had some wild rains and some wild wind here.
Yes.
So, Jim, you've got a book coming out soon. We don't know yet when, but it's imminent.
Mm-hmm.
Titled Hypnotizing Lions, which is, by the way, a fabulous title. I really love it. Tell us just a little bit about the premise of your book.
Well, at its core, it's a murder mystery. And in fact, how it starts is a truck driver has a horrendous accident, and he wakes up and he sees a house burning, realizes it's his. And it turns out it's 44 days after his accident. He has no memory of that time. He's charged with murder because there's a body burned beyond recognition that's found in the house. And so he doesn't believe he's killed his wife because he loves his wife. It's in the first person, so you see the depth of how much he loves her. Mm-hmm. It can't be her. He hopes it's not her. But he's sent to a psychiatric hospital, maximum security ward, it turns out, for hypnotherapy to try to recover his memories. And of course, the authorities believe that he's probably lying and that this occurred, right? This murder. So he's got to try to solve the murder from inside a psychiatric hospital. And it's called Hypnotizing Lions because in those kind of places, the patients have rankings like a lion pride. So he disrupts the pack rankings, and the sessions he has with his psychiatrist a black woman, Dr. Williams, and she's trying to keep the lid on delusions in the ward because there's the antagonist is a sociopath who doesn't commit any violence, but he loves to orchestrate delusions that could spill over into violence he could watch. So he kind of likes to watch. So he stirs things up. He gloms onto the main character's story that's revealed in hypnosis and produces a delusion that's kind of a masterful delusion that gets into paranormal zones. In other words, dimensional travel. So this gets kind of beyond a normal murder mystery when you get into that realm. So the whole question becomes, could this have occurred, or is this a delusion? And he's got to look at a
dissect him because you've got a beautiful lion on your shoulder right now. I don't know if you're aware of it.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's why I've been grinning here like a fool ever since.
This is Overline.
Oh, hello. It's great to see you, sweetheart. How are you?
Yes.
Oh, what a beautiful lion you are. Wow.
Yes, we also have a puppy around here too. Deb's, we're early this morning because it's Vancouver Island. So she's about to go to work, and we've got a puppy we're looking after. So she's going to take the puppy to work, but hopefully I didn't
realize that you were in Vancouver Island when I scheduled this. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. No, I'm happy to get up early and join you on these. I enjoy your program. I'm a big fan. So it's really,
thank you.
Particularly as an unpublished, novelist, I've got some short stories out there, but I feel kind of gratified and almost overwhelmed that you're including me in these things. So.
Well, especially since your unpublished novel, as you say, was nominated for a Best Unpublished Novel Award by the Crime Writers of Canada in 2019. So that had to be a big thrill.
Oh, it was a very big thrill because, as you know, in the game of trying to be a novelist, it's a long trail.
Yes.
I think many people maybe have better talent or can go at it a little quicker. I've been slow on the game, to try to get it out there. But my goal has always been, it's not about my ego, it's about making this a better story. So as long as I can make it better, I've been trying to improve,
We talked about that before, Jim, and I know that you're very conscious of quality control in creating something good. And I was telling our listeners in the lead-in that you had shared the first couple chapters with me, and your writing style is terrific. It really does draw you in, and it's got that very steady kind of pace, at least from the first few chapters that I saw. So well done, kudos. I can see why it was.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's also very original. It's quite the original premise.
Well, I think that's actually hurt me because it's called a kind of multi-genre, and it kind of can't be pinned down so well. When you start looking at, Amazon search words,
yes.
There's not a real, couple words that really match. Because even as a traditional murder mystery, it certainly isn't a cozy. And it certainly gets into almost, books like Slaughterhouse-Five and so on that are really hard to pin down and define what's really happening. But I've tried to make it at the core, again, it's a murder mystery that you are trying to solve as a reader, It's a very unreliable narrator too, because he's a mental patient. So it's a world of delusion. So what I play on the current psychology that's out there that's impacting people is something called folie à deux, which is shared delusion. And folie à deux is between two people. And so what happens is one person can have a very elaborate delusion, but if they can convince sort of a sane person that this is real, then the delusion becomes real. And we're in those times now, it's folie de family, and it's folie sort of for the whole world almost, in the way things have morphed and moved along. So I think it's apropos for that way. And certainly, how do we solve, do delusions destroy is one of the questions that this explores. Yeah.
And obviously, I think the answer is yes, they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm playing with the ending. So, the aspect of delusions can also be heartwarming, and maybe the ability to allow people to survive too. So, our myths and our legends are all in some ways delusional too, right? Stories to some degree.
Very true. Yeah.
We have to add some delusion to make them really juicy. So.
Yes, exactly. History really probably is a good portion delusion.
Well, one of the interesting things is I'm a big traveler. So at one point, my wife and I, Deb, went around the world for a year. And we never saw really much about Canada. It was in 1990 when we did this, 89, 90. So we were in Yugoslavia when the Civil War started, and we were about 100 kilometers from Iraq when the Gulf War started. So we had some interesting times. But in that whole process, we didn't really hear much about Canada. Canada wasn't in the English language papers. It, wasn't really talked about. But the Oka crisis occurred. So if you recall the Oka crisis in Montreal, there was First Nations land that was in dispute where it could have been a golf course. This is not allowed. So there was a roadblock to block some of the commuter traffic. And so it became the greatest picture opportunity for journalists because it would have a First Nations person at a barricade, have a soldier on the other side, both pointing guns. So that picture was everywhere. All of a sudden it exploded on every media forum was Canada with this First Nation uprising, And so probably 30 to 50 people said to us, geez, I don't think I'd travel to Canada now. It's too dangerous.
Oh my goodness.
So you think of what we hear about every country, every single news item is always exaggerated. It's kind of like the shipping news, I can't think of a headline to put forth. Why don't you say a hurricane's coming? Well, there is no hurricane. Well, you got two headings then. You've got tomorrow, hurricane averted, right? So, that's the most dramatic piece.
That's right. Hurricane averted. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, a similar thing is,
go ahead. People forget, you really have to look at a globe when you think about the world. And if you have a globe handy and you look for Canada, you understand how big we are, and then you take our population sparsity into effect. Any problem that you think you might encounter in Canada, it's pretty easy to step aside from. Pretty easy. And
we really do have a great reputation around the world. No matter where you go, when they hear you're from Canada, there's usually a smile or some kind of we're good ambassadors when we're out there. People tend to like Canadians. We tend to be respectful and we show empathy, which is a key thing.
Yeah, at least we always were received that way. I remember as a kid, we used to travel south of 49 a lot. We traveled through all the northern states on a pretty regular basis. And we were, as soon as they heard we were from Canada, we never wore maple leaves. I mean, we were just people, But as soon as they heard we were from Canada, because they'd always ask because we spoke just that little bit differently, it was always the extra piece of pie for my father and, whatever my mother needed. And, there was always that kind of welcoming. I'm not sure that really exists in certain parts now. In rural USA, I'm not sure we're really quite as welcome, but, hopefully we'll get that back.
I think we always quest that there's going to be a lot of focus on Canadians in the U.S., but typically, Canada, there's not really a lot of thought going on.
It's almost like because, I don't like to diverge here, but there's almost like an anti-sentiment going on right now in some quarters, not in all, but in some.
Yeah, I've worked quite a bit in the U.S. I've been an international consultant and a speaker, so I've had a lot of jobs where I speak in the States. And so at one point, I was speaking about a week after the Iraq War was declared. The Americans went to war, and of course, we didn't from Canada's side. We had suspicions about the weapons of mass destruction and so on. And so I was doing the speech, and of course, I was promoted as this Canadian speaker, and there's probably 1,500 people in the audience. And the very first question after it was over was, as a Canadian, I just want you to try to justify why you haven't joined your friends, the Americans, in the war with Iraq. So my answer was this. I said, well, think of North America as a family, okay? And if you think of the family members, the U.S. is dad, definitely dad. Dad's going to go and pick on the bullies and get justice and go down the neighborhood and be the policeman in terms of making the neighborhood, calm and so on. Canada is definitely the woman, the mom.
Oh, no. Tread carefully, Jim.
Well, I think we tend to be the one that says, wait, can't we talk about this before we try to fight? Couldn't we go and have a beer and kind of flush this out and try to see each side of it and make a win-win situation?
In our house, it really is more of wait till your mother gets home.
Yeah, in Mexico is the teenager. It's of course skewed younger demographically, right? But, and I think at sometimes in families, we should listen to mom the odd time. That was my take.
Not often.
Yeah. You know, and we've talked about this before, but I'm a big believer in women empowerment, and that's, you know, I'm a futurist, so
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
a weird profession that I've evolved into. And by the way, you are kind of a futurist too, Donna.
I'm very much a futurist. I take what's coming next very seriously. I really do.
Well,
Because it's
let's
exciting.
pull grave diagnosis out of the futurist hat.
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, Jim. Grave diagnosis was a conversation between myself and Madeline Harris Calloway. We were having lunch, and she said, "Is Carrick Publishing going to do an anthology in 2020?" And I was up in the air about it because it is a lot of work. And we had just done a Mesdames anthology, which we just had a great launch for. So it was fall of last year, right after that launch. And I was up in the air, and I said, "But if I did, there's two themes I would focus on." That I would have to choose between. And one would be an illness, and the other was a sport. Because I shouldn't throw that out because that'll probably be our next one. But because I had two great ideas for titles. And she really liked a grave diagnosis. She liked the theme of illness. She didn't know the title yet at that point, but she liked the theme of illness. So I settled on it. And when I decided in March, I made the decision, or February, somewhere in there, when I decided and I sent the call out, I had the title in mind, A Grave Diagnosis. And then bam, I became aware of COVID like everybody else. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to go down in history as this horrible opportunist who came up with this idea just at the dawn of COVID. But I already had submissions. And once I had submissions, I really couldn't change my theme. So here
I
we
would
are.
look at it more as a positive that you're prescient and that you have ESP, extra smart person.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that, Jim, for sure. I will tell you at the very least, it will be relevant.
And by the way, I should do some pandering and some promotion here. There's a
Yes, you absolutely should. Thank
yeah.
you.
Oh yeah. No, I had to bring these out of the
time. You've got there 13 o'clock by the Mesdames.
Yes. And it's really great to see novelists, you know, do the short story route too, and just the originality and it's very cool. So what your timing is the fall for this, right? The grave diagnosis.
Yes, it's come out late October. I don't think we're going to be able to have a physical launch. You know, the word right now is no, and you have to do so much preparation for that. So, but we'll be making a lot of noise online. We're thinking of having an actually a free-for-all Zoom launch.
Oh, interesting.
We haven't got all the logistics down yet, but a couple of my good friends are helping put that together. So we're thinking that that's what we'll do. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I look forward to it. I look forward to reading it for sure.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. It's going to be a big one. It's got 35 unique authors.
Wow, good stuff. Well, I'd like to put myself forward in a future one for sure.
Absolutely.
I've been playing around with short stories too. I'm part of a Souk Writers Collective, and we just put our newest one out called The Lucky Souk.
Hold that very still.
Yeah.
Hold it still for a sec there,
Lucky
Jim.
number 7, actually.
To see anything on this, you have to hold it still for a good minute. There we go. The Lucky Souk. That's great.
My story's called Lucky Souk, but it's Lucky number 7. But we have short stories and poetry. We have a great group, and we have some really successful writers. Wendy Morton, who's been a really celebrated poet in Canada, and some short story writers that have won awards and so on. And we do a student contest with this. So the money that's raised through sales go to support student contest. And we put the student winners in the book and try to get them into writing. So, and some of them have been brave enough to do the public launch and actually read from their stories. So it's been really rewarding and fun to work with the young people too.
Well, we've certainly added new writers in the Mesdames group. Now, this is not a Mesdames book coming out this year. This is just a Carrick book. But for the Mesdames of Mayhem, we usually do an anthology every second year. And we've done contests where we've invited new writers to submit. And as a result, we are now the Mesdames and Messieurs.
Yes.
We do have several male writers in the last couple of anthologies, so it's great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what else is, in these weird COVID times, we haven't talked through them. What's been happening with you? How's your life been going? And the changes and so
Well, for
on.
me, there are a lot of changes because I'm working exclusively from home, and so is my husband. And our two youngest kids are studying from home.
Hmm.
They're now a family of five in a small townhouse because our oldest had just moved home before all this hit. He planned to move home for a very short time. He was going to be between places, and of course, COVID hit, so now he's stuck with us. Poor guy. Um, but I'm really glad because if we're all going to be stuck, we should all be stuck together. So
Hmm.
I'm glad. He's the only one that goes out to work every day because he works in an essential service. So he goes out every day, but the rest of us are all home every day. And for us, it is a big change because we are both still working. So,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
for a lot of authors I talk to, they tell me no change at all. How about you?
Well, no, it has been a big change because I've kind of lived it's to some degree a schizophrenic life in the sense that I'm two people. I'm this guy that's trying to be an artist writer guy that likes to travel and play music with people, but I'm also this supposedly international speaker that goes around and does future consulting with all these industries and so on, which requires an awful lot of logic, and in both sides requires a lot of reading. So I get updates from every industry I've worked with. So last year I was on the future of insurance with Lloyd's of London, for example. And so reading all kinds of insurance reports and so on, so a lot of people would say that's fairly dry. I find it interesting trying to pull the nuggets of the trends and where things are headed. In insurance, we're moving to insuring intangibles, not tangibles. That's a huge change. And in every field, we're in a new economy, the innovation age.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so all the hows are changing in every field. We've seen it in writing and publishing, but that's a real challenge, and it's caused a lot of stress. This is enhanced the stress for everyone. Probably another wave will be kind of the mental health issues coming out of this.
Oh, yes.
But for me, it's given me a break from that speaking side. Of course, our industry is completely shut down, and in fact, I have events that have been booked, in the past. I'm working with the Canadian Heating and Plumbing Association, and
Right.
the event's next February 17th, and it's been postponed.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got strategic planning 3 days I'm supposed to be doing in August. I don't think that's going to happen either.
Mm-hmm.
And so my reading level of all the kind of information I have to read, and I get, the newsletters from the International Peat Moss
Right.
Association, every other group I work with. So I've been able to read more sort of pleasure novels, stories, fiction, and for me, that's wonderful. And it's meant a real good boost for me as a writer. So I've been
Yeah.
able to
Yes.
jump in. I'm doing a screenplay actually as well, which is
Yeah.
I'm finding quite interesting. I
Oh,
took
I would love to see that. I would love to see
yeah.
that. How far along are you?
Well, I've taken a master screenwriter course as well, and so it's 24 modules, and I'm at module 13 of the 24. So I'm a lot of it was planning and character building and interviewing your characters, and I love the fact that they wanted to create the action and reveals before you got to dialogue, because particularly in screenplays, it's easy just to kind of throw dialogue to complete your plot and the exposition
Sure.
stuff. And so dialogue's kind of the last thing to do as you create the scenes. And I'm
Yeah.
using Movie Magic, which is a new software I haven't used before. So, you can't put in a screenplay in Word. It's got to be, one of the prime software. So it's a cool thing. I find screenplay work maybe easier for me with my skill set than writing a novel.
Mm-hmm.
The big difference being that I kind of think visually and I think in terms of movie setting up even a novel. But, in a novel, you have to be artistic. So if you're describing a sunset, you better say something like the sun set like a tiger's eye blinking in the night. You have to come up with something non-cliche and creative. But when you're writing a screenplay, you just go wonderful sunset, beautiful sunset, because the cinematographer is going to find the place with a sunset. You don't have to
Yes.
describe it in as
Yes.
poetic a depth.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a different skill set, and you cover everything's have to be visual. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the building the skills on both sides kind of help each side, So
Oh,
again,
of course it does.
schizophrenic.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Yeah.
My husband is an economist. In fact, he's spoken with the heating, plumbing, and air conditioning people. So when you mentioned them, my eyes kind of perked up. But he's done this kind of writing from an economic point of view, and
Mm-hmm.
it really does help his fictional writing a lot. It really does. Because if you are, pardon me, if you are serious about your work, the same way you are about your craft, then you want to find a way to take whatever this is cut and dried and make it enlightening to people, make
Hmm.
it something that they want to glom onto and are interested in.
Hmm.
So, you know, I think that if you can make that interesting, it's going to carry over into your creative writing for sure.
Well, and I think of, every author that has produced really good work will say, like Margaret Atwood will say, it's heavy research. You have to know almost everything about your subject. You don't know what you're going to pull out and actually put in the story. And you kind of need sort of three facts to prove to the reader that you're authentic, But what are
Yes.
those three facts and what symbolically they're going to represent and so on is sort of the trick. But the more research you do, the more you've got some kind of ammunition that's going to pull out of your quiver and shoot that arrow, at some point.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly. I went to a workshop at Bloody Words 150 years ago, and the writer was, what he said was that you need to know everything about your character inside and out, every single fact. It doesn't mean your reader needs to know it.
mhm.
You need to know it
They
because
have to be real people in your head, basically, right? So,
exactly. They have to be real people that you can just call up and look at and say, oh, yeah, yeah, he does wear brown shoes or, you know.
and
Um,
I think every author has that magic moment at some point where the character takes over and you start writing and you didn't know it was you writing, and all of a sudden the characters changed what you were planning or whatever.
yes.
The characters had this argument in your subconscious and won.
Yeah,
That,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you do it brilliantly from what I saw, and I can't wait to see the rest of the novel, really.
Well, I appreciate that.
Hypnotizing
Yeah.
Lions, guys, watch for it. It's coming out 2020 by hook or by crook. Come
Yeah.
hell
Well, I
or
think.
water. I've got more cliches. Go ahead, test me.
Well, and
I love
in COVID times, I think that always, as this guy that tries to help people in my speeches and so on, I think in COVID times we should try to do something that maybe helps anyone watching that improves their day or their world. And one of the things that I've been saying always is that we tend to be haughty in our heads and think that our heads control our bodies. When
oh,
our bodies are controlling our heads and we're not listening to our bodies, which
yes. There's an old joke about that, Jim.
oh,
And
go, let's hear the joke. Yeah.
every body part was vying for the position of boss, right? Pardon me. This, I may have to edit this out. I've got a little sore throat, and in COVID times, a little sore throat is very
Yes.
anxiety.
No, and particularly in public, you're going to be drawing a lot of
Oh,
interest.
yeah, exactly. I don't dare clear my throat in public. But the old joke is that the brain said, listen, I'm the master. I'm the master here. I decide what goes on, and I should be boss. And the lungs said, if it weren't for me, you'd have no oxygen. I should be boss. And the eyes said, I take you around. I show you wonderful things. Art is the world. I should be boss. And the stomach said, well, if you didn't have the pleasure of eating, you'd die very quickly. I should be boss. Well, of course, we know who the boss is. Once the asshole shut down, that was it. Game over.
There's no doubt to that one. And
No.
actually, I have a joke I use in speeches at times. And in the industrial age, everything was hierarchies and building these hierarchies with praise to the people at the top. And
Yes.
typically that meant that the people at the bottom weren't treated really well. And so think of your organization as monkeys in a tree. And the more branches and more levels you have of ego-driven people, the more this works. But when you're the monkey at the top looking down, all you see is a sea of smiling faces of the monkeys looking up. But if you're a monkey right at the bottom of the tree looking up, what do you see?
Nothing but assholes.
Nothing but assholes.
A tree full of assholes.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah, so everything's evolving.
that's right. And I'm old enough
But
to remember those days of the way the monkeys used to be very pyramidal in business. And,
we have monkey puzzle trees here in Victoria where they're such complicated branches, the monkey couldn't climb it because it's such a puzzle. It's a very interesting tree. Yeah, yeah. But, if this body mind control, they're partners and so on. But, what the body does will direct the mind. So, we tend to think, oh, that's not true. If we smile, we're going to feel better in the day. Or if we cry, we're going to, if we force ourselves to do that, it'll change our mindset. But it does. So all we have to do is try a high five here, Donna. Let's try a high five and see how we feel. Ready?
Yeah. There you
Okay,
go.
notice how you get a boost of juice. You get a boost. And now let's think about what is the body language for depression?
Oh yeah, we know. You just lie about. Yeah.
Well, say someone's walking or sitting or moving around, what do they look like? They tend to be, bent over. They tend to, their arms are scrunched together. Their head is down. It's all the behavior we do when we're looking at our phones.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating depression every day in
Good
all our
point.
activities.
Good point.
And
Yeah.
the point is that all change, and this is a guy who experienced with the trend stuff, all change is good and bad, always, invariably. It's never all good or all bad. And so naively, what we do as individuals planning, as corporations, as governments, is we tend to go, that's great, let's jump in, and then the bad bites us. Or conversely, we're not going there, and then we miss the good. And in essence, we're in an era where the media stokes this. So in every argument, let's hear from the good, let's hear from the bad. Is it good or is it bad? Is this good or is it bad? And it's always both.
Yes.
And so we end up magnifying these arguments to such great depths because no side will ever give in. And when I get into planning, I say, well, whatever change is happening, if you identify a specific change, what is the good could come out of it? And what is the bad that can come out of it? And for the bad things, what could we do to avoid them? And for the good things, how do we embrace them, right? And so as soon as we start looking in that way, we get a better world. And so that's kind of my message out there as a speaker. And so I try to throw that in these kind of, interviews and so on.
For my Psych 101 studies, the one teacher said, the world really is only what you see, and you only wear your own glasses. And that really is it. And in my own experience, I mean, I've suffered long time chronic depression at different points in my life. And I've thankfully been trigger free for quite a while, and very luckily, But what I've discovered is there's no point blaming the victim. There's no point saying that person just should snap out of it. Or, if they wanted to be happy, they'd be happy. Because frankly, that's ridiculous. I mean, nobody wants to be ill or unhappy. Nobody really does, even if they seem like they do. But there are, as you say, things that we can do little by little in baby steps when we're in the throes of a depression to start getting out of it. And one of the things I found is you can't be unhappy and dance. You can dance happily, I know. I do.
Yeah, but and I try to throw dance into my day. So my wife and I are doing high fives and little dances through the day, and it helps.
I don't care what kind of dancer you are. You cannot dance and be unhappy. You cannot sing and be unhappy, even if you're singing an unhappy song. You cannot sing and be unhappy.
In fact, that's one of my...
around the block with your husband and be unhappy. I challenge you. These are the simple things, you got to do these things. And then it comes down to, too, what you said about embracing the future. I tend to be a jump into the future kind of person. And if you think about it, who in my situation in life would have the nerve to do these interviews? I mean, who the hell am I? Why would I be hosting these interviews? When I was like 18, I wanted to go into broadcast school, but it cost, I think, something like $800 just to get in, and I didn't have $800. I was starving. I was a starving student. I had no parental support. I was out on my own, and there was no way. There was no way I was getting into that. I mean, I had to go to the cheapest community college I could find to get any education. And that's all well and good. I went, I had fun. But that came back to me that I always had that desire to get into broadcasting. So I thought, well, screw it. We have the tools. Go do. And that's my advice to people. If there's something you want to do and it's not going to hurt anyone and it might help some people, like getting word out about authors, who I love. Authors are my favorite people. Get out there and do it.
Well, so many people say, I've thought about writing a book, and the whole point is give it a try. Start.
Exactly. Thinking about it doesn't get it done.
Well, and certainly if we look at the good and the bad in the future and think of where we're headed, COVID presents some really positive opportunities for the future too. So I know people tend to glom onto the gloom and the doom, but certainly it's a reset for the world, and we're proving that we can respond in grave circumstances, and maybe we should respond a bit more to climate change, for example, and we have to evolve. If you look at the history of the world, we've gone from hunter-gatherers to, and at each stage, it's technology that is the lead edge of change. So change bubbles through technology. It affects social cultural values, the economy, and the nature of jobs moves to, finally, at the end of the day, the political and legal side handles it. But if we look at the technologies, fundamental technologies, we're entering a new economy. So we've gone from hunter-gatherers, then technology that tills the soil, the agricultural age, then tools run by energy, the industrial age. And so in each case, technology morphs the social, cultural vibrancy and so on. And that's the era we're in right now. And so there was already so much stress because all the hows are changing and the way we work as a world is changing. And so there's a big pushback to where we're headed. And a lot of the phenomena we're seeing that is causing the tension around the world is the kind of social pushback to where we're headed, which is a very positive.
Necessity is always at the tip of the spear, always.
Mm-hmm.
Here I got another cliche for you. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. I mean, we reached this point, we thought we were going along fairly well. But we knew that things could change. I mean, those of us who worked in business ever, and I've spent my full life in business, those of us who've worked in business have known for a long time that we were doing things the old way. And it just wasn't really necessary. But we were happy to keep doing it because, it meant, hey, we show up. And if you show up, that's, as Woody Allen said, that's a big part of the game. Just showing up is a big part of the game. People see you there. They see you engaged. They see you doing your work. And so they want to keep you, right? This is how you keep a job. I've had a job for 43 going on 44 years. I've worked full time, supported myself and my family. And I can tell you. You
must have started when you were very, very young then.
I did. At
5 years old.
I was a child worker. Your lion is back. But and the way to keep a job in those days and in those times is show up, be seen doing your work, because that's a big part of it. But I've known for a long time, because I'm not a stupid cookie, I've known that I could be doing everything I was doing at home.
Mm-hmm.
And presto, like that, we were forced.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, doing it all at home. And I don't really feel like I'm missing a whole lot by doing it at home. Some engagement with people, of course, but we stay pretty engaged,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, all these different Zoom methodologies always help, and we're going to see a real change in how the workplace operates in future. So it's interesting times, that's for sure, and a lot of sadness, but and a real mix of how this affects people directly. I lived in Jasper, Deb and I, for 11 years, and I've always tried to live sort of rurally next to the wild. The kind of the bridge between those schizophrenic elements of my life, the Mr. Logic, international, consultant, and the writer, kind of musician guy. And the connection between the two has been nature. So I love to get out in outdoor offices. I find nature places to do my work in. And so I'm always trying to get out there into sort of the wild. And I live in Jasper. We were off the grid where we lose cell phone coverage. And here in Souk on Vancouver Island, we drive just a little north of here. We're also out of the cell phone. So there's no cell phone.
You're off the grid. You're off the grid.
Off the grid, yeah. So,
I got all the cliches, Jim. I got them all.
So it's been a challenge, though, trying to live in a rural place, doing this kind of international, city-fied kind of work. And so, as a speaker, I'd have to drive from Jasper to either Edmonton or Calgary Airport on a regular basis through whiteout snowstorms, trying to make it to get a flight. And so it was a real challenge trying to be that nature guy in the modern world. And so I'm kind of gratified because I've been asked by Nature Labs and Ghost Bear, the Ghost Bear organization started the Ghost Bear, Simon Jackson started the Ghost Bear National Park in BC. And he rallied all kinds of students when he was a high school student to make that happen. And he started a program where he's trying to introduce nature education to high school students. So I've been one of the 100 Canadians chosen to be interviewed. I've been interviewed by him, and my interviews will be in the high school curriculum to connect with nature, to promote nature. So that's been really rewarding too, to be part of that process. So
That's fantastic. Yeah, send me the links to that when that's.
Yeah, it should be out this year for sure. And when it comes out, I'll definitely be out social media
You
promoting
had
it.
a little throwaway word there. You said music.
Yes,
Are you?
yes. Yeah, well, I've always loved music, but back in the day, when I was a kid, I think if I recall, in the choir times, I was told to, mouth the words because you're off key. So I never thought I had any skills at all in that level, and so never really pursued it. But I love music, and I love going to concerts. So I've been a big concert goer for many, many years. And geez, living near Toronto when I lived in Ontario, probably went to at least a dozen a summer in Toronto. And I always wanted to be a musician. And in fact, we had a group called the Flying Shorts in high school that had karaoke, like we pump in the music and then act out the song. So I was the lead singer in that. It was a comedy thing, sort of thing, but we perform with that. And
all my singing is a comedy thing.
yeah. Well, and then when I moved to Jasper, I had a bunch of friends that are musicians, and because we get 2 million tourists internationally that come to Jasper just in the summer, what the tourists have told Jasperites quite clearly is they'd rather go to a bar and have locals play in a jam night and see Canadian culture than to have professional bands showing up playing in a slick performance. And they also get to go on stage and join in, which is like a life thing for them. So every night there's a different bar or place, venue that has a jam night. So I was playing with a lot of these people, like I'd sit in when they were jamming, and my wife bought me a harmonica just so I could kind of fit in. And what I've learned is that I have a knack for doing lyrics. So every musician I play with tends to have little ditties they've created musically. They'll play them for me, and I'll have a little chat with them, and I'll go away and create lyrics, or even on the spot. And then we work out songs. So I travel with a Zoom recorder. I meet with musicians. We work on songs, and I tend to put the lyrics together, and they tend to focus on the music. Although I contribute that we could do da da da's or whatever. But,
well, yeah, da da da's, or as we call them in the industry, pentameters, right?
That's right.
I know nothing about the
So
industry.
yeah, I really enjoyed that. And actually, my character in the protagonist in Hypnotizing Lions is a songwriter. So in times of stress, he writes songs. So at one point, he's in the solitary confinement, and he's thinking, who has it worse? And he writes a song called Colorblind. You can just get snippets of it here and there, but they're actual songs that we've worked out and have demos for. So at some point, I don't know if they're slick enough now. I'm hard to judge these things when they're ready, but I'd like to put out the sort of the songs for Hypnotizing Lions with the band. It's really a songwriting collective.
I would love to see. You got so many links you're gonna have to send me. You're gonna be promised over your head in links here.
Well, you have the 5 family members, and you've got a daughter, I think, going to university coming up.
Yes, she starts in September at U of T online
Fully online. Is that the way it's going to go?
That's the way they're starting. We're just taking it 1 month at a time, but they've said that they're starting online.
Well, the difference is
because I loved U of T. Like I did go to U of T for a while down to the St. George campus, and that place just speaks to my heart. It really does. I love that place passionately, and so I'm looking forward to when she can physically go down and have in particular a September and October at St. George campus, because with the leaves everywhere, I mean, it really is just it's a thing to behold. I love the sound of the leaves under the feet. I remember being 19 and I was taking literature of all things. And I remember I was briefly dating an older man who said to me, and he was a professor, and he said, not where I studied, believe me, but at a different university. So no, he doesn't get in trouble. But he said, that's great. You can be a professor or you can be unemployed, keep studying lit, But
I started out at English lit too at Western, and eventually switched, well, in my second year, switched to business because I thought, well, everything's a business, you know. I got into law school too after second year, and I thought, well, I didn't really want to be a lawyer because that tended to be all about rules and enforcing rules, and I'm not a big rule guy. I like breaking them more than enforcing them. I think, as all true entrepreneurs tend to say, but
yes, and all writers.
yes, and writers, yeah, we all want to break the rules, and we always get into these debates whether, well, this is the norm, you should do it this way. Can I change it? Can I have multiple point of views?
Do it, as I said. Just do it. You know, you got to just do it and see if it works. You know.
That's right.
As
Yeah.
long as it's not going to hurt or encroach anyone else, just do it. You
well,
know?
and a lot of the most brilliant ideas come from accidents. So, you know,
exactly.
again, the more you try stuff, the more you glean
exactly.
some kind
Split lip, right? The split lip and the clarinet, right? Yeah. I can't remember which one. Was it Tommy Dorsey or was it? It was one of them. One of them had split lip, and the sound came out, and it was just brilliant.
I think of my memories of. I think of memories of my father. He was a big band guy, Count Basie, and he used to dance. Sunday was our dance morning. And, you know, you talk about the family and 5 people. I come from a very small family. So it was just my dad and I growing up. I didn't have brothers and sisters. My mom actually left home when I was 9. So, and I didn't see her for 8 years. And the next time I saw her was in a mental hospital. So it wasn't a very pleasant experience. But, you know, as someone that, you mentioned depression and so on. I wonder about this with writers too. If we've had some kind of trauma and that it's a way to get it out, that a lot of writers have some roots of this kind of stuff, but
I'm quite sure.
Yeah. So, you know, for me, you're rejected by your mom. That's a kind of a big blow, particularly when you're 9, you kind of internalize and think it's your cause. And so, you know,
You don't understand about illness. You don't understand what would drive a mother like the illness. Really,
well, and I didn't realize till after she died that she was Native First Nation. So she kept that secret. She left the reserve to avoid the residential schools. My grandmother took her out of Quebec, Restigouche Reserve, and they moved to Ontario, and they just said they were French and kind of got through without admitting that they had First Nations, which is yeah. So I didn't realize I was until after she died, and so that's kind of been a revelation, and I'd like to kind of get more into those roots and understand that more. But for me, one of the reasons I've been able to be adventurous and do all kinds of things is I've had such a small family in life. And for my wife, Deb, and I, we got together later in life. And I think, you know, part of that is trust issues. You know, if your mom leaves you, how do you trust someone? And so it took me a long time. And of course, we've been married now 30 years. So, I mean, we've got past that.
Yeah, you finally do get past it, don't you?
Yeah. And so that's part of the thing in that nature labs was, you know, things do get better. Hang in there, kid. Kind of thing. So
they do get better. Sometimes we make them better, and sometimes they just actually, the old problems kind of become less relevant. Like
oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
You know,
and so with me, I've been able to do a lot more things in life because we haven't had family. I haven't had kids. We went through in vitro and it didn't work. And the odd thing was they didn't find any malady, so we didn't get any funding for it because there was nothing wrong, but it didn't work. So that was a kind of a traumatic period where we went. You know, I think Deb was in Toronto at hotels for 250 days in 1 year. You know, and my role, you'd be called in for your fulfillment of your job, and there'd be all the guys in the waiting room to take their turn, and we all cheer each other on. And, you know, it was, it didn't work. And then a lot of people said, well, you'd be great parents, you should adopt. And at that point, as we're, you know, you're approaching 40 and now we got to start that process. So what ended up happening is we ended up saying, well, I guess we'll be more adventurous. So we moved from Ontario and moved to Jasper. Now we moved to Vancouver Island, and I've certainly done a lot of different things in life and a lot of different, so many careers with this kind of, I quit my job, new product development, to be a writer way back when, and evolved into all these other sort of side jobs and work. And so life's been quite an adventure and quite marvelous. And I think now at this stage, it's I've lived life to kind of create stories, and now it's time to share more of them. So
yes. And it's funny because I remember back in those days when I was studying lit, when I was like 19 or something, and you have all these ideals. And I always knew from the time I was 6 that I wanted to be a writer. I've always known. And writers have always been my favorite people, even though I didn't know them personally. I read them. I used to read just voraciously. But I can remember at the time saying to myself, you're not ready yet. You're not ready. Like the technical skills aren't everything. And I mean, you don't have a lot of those anyway. But even if you did, it's about having the stories, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
it's about
definitely.
having confidence in your stories, knowing where your stories fit in the greater scheme of the world, you know?
Yeah, and I think I'm recalling Melody Campbell on your show fairly recently, if I got this right, where what's
Yes.
the three things it takes to be a good writer? And I think she said talent, and then she said, well, persistence was the third one, and craft, of course, learning the craft. But the talent she defined as the ability to come up with original, unique ideas to write
Yes.
about,
Yes.
which I thought was an interesting take on
Yes.
talent, and that's so true. And that's where I kind of am challenged. I've had so many stories. Like when I do my speeches,
Mhm.
I'll look through my list of stories for this particular group, and I customize the group, and I've got over 100 stories that illustrate different kind of business lessons. And the
Mhm.
real stories that I've been involved with a client or my own businesses, and so then these stories should be shared, and in the speaker world, the speaker agents that represent me, the major national speaker bureaus, one of the big ones, they've obviously been asking me for the business book, and so I've got this kind of hue and cry to get this out, and many of the people that have seen me speak want that too. So I know that's coming as well. And it's been, can I frame the business book in a fiction content? Can I create these two schizophrenic things and not make it a text business book, make it a
Case studies.
powerful
Case
fiction and get the
studies.
lessons in there?
Case studies.
I don't know. I've been working on that one for a while, and I think I've got maybe a route to that one, and certainly that's a sort of a life goal, bucket list goal, to get that one out as well.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Jim, it has been such a great pleasure to talk to you. I could talk to you all day. That is just wonderful. And I love your background. My God, BC. Wow, I love it.
I see we
Uh,
got similar fireplace kind of action there too.
well, yeah, except mine's a faux background. Like you see, I disappear if I do that. Matrix.
Oh, okay.
Matrix.
Oh, interesting. Oh, very technically savvy. There you
Because
go.
my quiet room is kind of dark and
Well,
not
it's
that.
kind of fortunate here that it was a cloudy day, because if it was sunny, I'd be all fuzzed out, because there's lights, all like windows
Oh
everywhere in
yeah,
this
yeah,
place.
yeah.
So,
That's right. I'm always having to tell people
yeah,
don't
and
have a
we're
bright
we're
light.
actually just looking after this house. It's friends of ours that are camping, and they've got extensive gardens. And my wife Deb's a gardener, so she's in charge, in
Okay,
terms of
okay.
plant life.
Wonderful.
And we've got some pets to look after. So it's
Yeah.
a fun thing to
Well,
be by the lake doing
if I were to walk out from here just a few feet, this is the room that you would see. So I thought, okay,
that. Oh, good.
that's what I prefer this background. I like our fireplace. I like our funky paint. I like all that. So yeah.
Nice. Well,
And
it's been a real pleasure talking with you, Donna, and hopefully we do more of these, and hopefully I get that novel out there. Well, I think
yeah,
more likely it'll be next year.
you
I'm
think?
working on the series aspect of it, so that's where I've delayed it now. I think I'm ready to go editorially, but I want to make sure I've got the series pinned down so that I have the right reveals in book one, right? So that's
That's
what's
right. You got
slowing
to
me
keep
down a
the
little
arc
bit right
going. Exactly. There can't be any surprises that don't fit. There can be surprises, but they have to be aha
now.
surprises.
Well, I'd
Yeah.
hate to get to the last and say, oh my God, if I had
And it
planted
was
that in
all
book
a
one,
dream.
it would have all
My
worked out.
husband's pet peeve in literature is it was all a dream. He says
Yeah.
that's the biggest cop out a writer can ever do.
Yes. We don't want that as the ending. That's for sure.
And then he woke up.
That's right.
Anyways, Jim, you have a great day. Take care. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Donna. Have a great day too. High five.
I want to thank Jim Bottomley for joining us today on Dead to Rights. And it's always great to hear from a new up and coming author. Jim has a great thriller coming out titled Hypnotizing Lions. So watch for that in 2021. I was mistaken. It's not coming out in the fall of 2020. It's been deferred, as you've heard. So, and also our thanks, as always, to Ted Carrick for the great music. And watch for our upcoming anthology, A Grave Diagnosis. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week.
A dusty road, a man alone. His vital signs go on hold. And I don't know what you've been told, but the years have turned my eyes gold. And I told you what you told me, we'd never be in the same boat for free. Yet it rides, let it ride.